turn into our ever continuing case of Nick Rekieta versus the state of Minnesota. Nick Rekieta, as you may recall, requested permission to appeal. He didn't have the right to appeal. He asked, can I appeal? And the Court of Appeals is like, no, you can't appeal. Duh. Like, duh. Just no shit. I mean, come on. It was absurd. It was ridiculous. And the Court of Appeals dealt with it fairly summarily because, it's insane. We turn our attention to the state of Minnesota and the Court of Appeals of the state of Minnesota versus Nick Rekieta. Special term order pursuant to law. This order, as you can see in the footnote, is non-precedential except as to law of the case, which is it's binding onto itself in its own case. It's not binding into any other case. Res judicata, which is kind of the same principle, and collateral estoppel, which is basically the same principle. Basically, it's confined to this case and anything you would want to try to bring as an associated case. So if you tried to somehow bring some other case that tried to attack this from the side, then this would be precedential there. But otherwise, not so much, because there's nothing new here. Why would it be precedential? That would be really dumb. Considered and decided by the chief judge, who apparently decided to sit on this thing, and some other people. The petitioner, Nick Rekieta, is charged with second-degree controlled substance crime, unlawful possession of the firearm while being a user of drugs, or in possession there too, at least, and child endangerment, in so much as the children were present at a place in which children were present. So this is just the children were present at a place in which the drugs were present. This is not related to child services, nor is it related to the drugs that may or may not have been found in the kid's hair. This charge is solely that the kids are there at a place in which drugs are. That's it. Which is proven by the fact we found drugs and we found kids. So that's easy. He moved to suppress the evidence to dismiss the charge and request an evidentiary hearing under Franks. Go away. To investigate whether the search warrant application contained, and here's the key, material misrepresentation regarding social media photos, among other things. No, it's not material. No one cares. The district court denied petitioner's motion for the Franks hearing and his motion to suppress. Petitioner seeks discretionary review. In other words, Court of Appeals, I know I don't have the right, but would it be cool with you if I appealed anyway? I know I don't have the right to, but I'd really like to, if you don't mind. No. Of the district court's order denying his motion for the Franks. Petitioner argues this court should grant its discretionary review in its largesse in the interest of justice because the Franks issue is important and doubtful, lol, and resolution of the issue would obviate the need. The state has not filed a response. That's how you know how shit it is. That's how you know how shit it is. The state of Minnesota didn't even bother filing a response to the request for the appeal because it's absolute shit. The state of Minnesota didn't even bother filing a response. They literally couldn't be bothered because it's bullshit. Right. And we don't need to tell the Court of Appeals that. They know. Great. Criminal defendants generally do not have the right to appeal until final judgment. Hey, once you're convicted and sentenced, you can appeal then if you want. But a court may allow an appeal from an order not otherwise appealable in the interest of justice. During a prior stream, I gave you some incidences where that might be true. For example, it's extraordinary. It's novel. There's otherwise not an avenue to appeal. Appeal after the trial would basically be moot. Or we just want to beat up the lower court, right? Those would be the kind of things we're looking for. The Minnesota Rules of Civil Appellate Procedure govern the procedure for the appeal. In determining whether to grant or discretionary review, this court considers multiple factors, including whether the ruling is questionable or involves an unsettled area of law. There would be that novel question thing I mentioned before, right? When I was looking at highlights, like unsettled. Oh, in other words, it's novel. Oh, yeah. The importance of the legal issue presented. Oh, like it's extraordinary importance, extraordinary impact, that kind of thing. And whether the legal issue would evade review. Oh, like there is no other opportunity to to review, like those three factors, wow. The Court of Appeals is laying out almost the exact same three factors I laid out. Plus the fourth factor they didn't mention, we just really like to beat up on the trial court that day. But otherwise, they mentioned the exact same three factors I mentioned. It's extraordinary. It's novel. There would be no effective means of review. And the Court of Appeals is like, yeah, that's normally why we do it. No shit. No shit, that's normally why you do it. And none of those things are here. Generally, discretionary review is only extended to important legal questions that have broad applicability. Does that sound like extraordinary? It certainly sounds like extraordinary. Broad applicability. Really important. Wow. It's almost like we're talking the same language. It's amazing. The petitioner must also show a compelling reason for this court to grant discretionary review. Why is it really, really important that we do this right now? Anyone have any ideas? Petitioner does not explain why the district court's pretrial ruling denying his motion to suppress and for Frank's hearing requires this court's immediate review because, again, it's a day that ends in Y. They do this all the time. It's literally something that happens every day. So why is your thing really important? It's not. Moreover, this court generally does not grant petitions for discretionary review of pretrial because defendants may utilize the procedure which permits expedited review of a pretrial ruling that is dispositive or make a contested trial unnecessary. So if it's a dispositive issue, maybe we'll allow you appeal, maybe if you ask real nicely. Although review would be somewhat delayed by requiring petitioners to appeal from any final judgment, the pretrial ruling will not evade review. In other words, we can look at this once the conviction happens, right? There is nothing stopping the Court of Appeals from reviewing this and determining whether or not the district court screwed up or the trial court screwed up during the appeal. So, we can make this determination later. We're going to determine, by the way, the trial court was within its discretion. Spoiler alert. But we won't tell you that now. All we'll tell you is that we could review it later. We're still going to say no later, but we're not going to tell you that part right now. And defendant's interest in avoiding time and expense of trial does not by itself establish a compelling reason, because if it did, then we would have to extend it to every single pretrial decision by necessity, and that would be really, really dumb, because that would just be judicially inefficient. Petitioner has not otherwise shown a compelling reason for this court to extend its discretionary appellate jurisdiction when the pretrial issues are fully reviewable. In other words, ask us after you're convicted. Ask us after you're convicted. We'll let you know what the answer is. By the way, the answer is the trial court was within its discretion. But, we can wait for that for a later day. Hereby order, the petition is denied. Yeah. So, no surprises there. Absolutely no surprises. This motion was less likely than the Franks motion. That's how dumb this was. It was so dumb the state didn't even bother to respond. That's how dumb it was. Because it made no logical sense. So, no shit, you can't do this. So, I believe the next thing that's supposed to happen is, I believe the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, there is a hearing at which there's supposed to be a plea conference of some kind. The ultimate result of that would either be we have an agreement or we're scheduling for trial. So there's supposed to be a meeting between the prosecution and the defense. I suppose maybe a come to Jesus meeting of some kind. And presumably at that time, if there is a plea deal to be offered, not that the prosecution can be forced to, but if there's a plea deal to be offered, it would be offered and it could be accepted or rejected or negotiated at that time. So I don't know what the state is prepared to do here or not. To me, it's a dead simple case to prove. It's easy. You put the cop on the stand. You ask them to walk through the body cam footage. You ask them what they found. You put the lab tech on the stand. What did you find? They were drugs. You're done, right? It's a case that can be done in a morning. I can do this entire case before lunch. It's easy. It's easy. I can do the entire prosecution and rest all before lunch. I need half a day. and I can do it without breaking a sweat. And then what does the defense have? Jack shit. Because what are they going to do? They got nothing. So, put people on the stand to say he doesn't have drugs in his house. I don't even know what that would look like, even in principle. I mean, the only other thing that you could do is for Nick, of course, to take the stand in his own defense, which, of course, would be hilarious. But, doesn't really make any sense anyway. So, yeah. So the only reason the state really has to offer a plea deal is efficiency. That's really the only motivation of the state at this point is efficiency. Plus, if they're just feeling soft. So the only real reasons they have to offer are, because we don't really like prosecuting drug offenders, we're feeling generous. We want to do something because you're a first-time offender and we don't like seeing first-time offenders, and we believe that you can make it, and we're a relatively generous prosecution. We don't really like to see people banged up by the system. So their largesse is one motivation, and their other motivation to offer a plea is time, efficiency, and certainty. Not that they're lacking in any of those things, because again, it's dead simple, but still you have to put the 2 cops on the stand plus the lab tech, and there is time and prep, and there's still some possibility that something could go wrong. So blah, blah, blah. So in the name of largesse and certainty, those are your motivations to offer a deal. Of course, those are only like motivations to offer a deal, assuming one is even available. The prosecution is under no particular obligation to offer a deal. But, maybe, depending, although Nick certainly hasn't been helping with that effort. The things he's been saying and things he's been doing, I'm sure many of those things have come to the attention of the prosecuting's office. So Nick certainly hasn't been ingratiating himself, I would imagine. But, then again, it's Thanksgiving. So maybe we're in a good spirit that day. So if they say that there's a plea deal, it won't surprise me. If they say there's no plea deal, it won't surprise me. So, and in terms of what kind of plea deal would be available, I honestly don't know what kind of plea deal would be possible. 5th degree, maybe like baseline felony, and maybe do some drug treatment at this time. I honestly don't even know what's available. So it depends how gracious they're feeling that day. I seriously doubt a misdemeanor's on the table. I think if there ever was the possibility for a misdemeanor, which, it is a first-time drug offense, and, it is personal possession, and it's not the first time someone's been caught up with drugs. So it wasn't like exactly ridiculous. But then again, it was a 2nd-degree felony. So you are trying to move pretty far. But assuming there ever was the possibility for a misdemeanor on the table, I somewhat doubt that possibility still remains. But you never know. Maybe they're feeling really, really generous. Maybe they want to like give him like something really, really good just to feel like they did a good thing that day. Who knows? But I think my bet is on it probably doesn't settle. But if it does settle, hey, that's fine. And then it's just, of course, whatever they agree to at that point. So, yeah, we'll see. It was 26 grams. 28 grams is an ounce. So it's, it's pretty close to an ounce. It's a fairly substantial amount of cocaine. No one is denying this. But, it's Minnesota. Maybe their prosecutors, friendly to the drug users, and they probably do have bigger fish to fry, to be honest. No. Maybe he gets off with a fairly generous deal. If he walks out of this thing with somehow not a felony on his record, though, then that would be really awesome for him. So if he manages to somehow walk away with this thing without a felony, that'd be great. But I'm not super optimistic. I think the odds don't favor him. But it's a realistic possibility. Unlike this bullshit that he filed. Unlike the will you please consider my appeal. Right? Unlike the please will you consider my appeal. That was some bullshit. And the Franks hearing was some pretty big bullshit. Although not as big as this. So the Franks hearing was bullshit. This was like bullshit squared. The possibility of some sort of plea deal potentially even not including a felony is less bullshit. It's less bullshit. But a lot of it depends on the largesse of the prosecutor, which once again, given the statements that he's been making and also statements he's made in the past and generally probably not, exactly following the guide to how to win friends and influence his people, I don't know that largesse is necessarily a factor that's really going well in his favor, but you never know. Maybe that Thanksgiving spirit is just really percolating through the prosecutor's office that day. Who can say?